Well, welcome to another episode of Art and Victory from the Show Starts Now Studios. We're hanging out at Main Site Contemporary Art Gallery down here in Norman. These paintings are awesome. There's a cloud exhibit. It's David Holland is the artist, and we've just been warming up, talking about the art. It's been amazing. You have until July 12th to come down here and see it if you're into that, and you should be. I want to go ahead and meet our panelists. We have three awesome panelists today. If you could please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Check. My name is Jacoby Isham. I'm an artist that goes by Jacoby Ryan from Loudon, Oklahoma, who is a hip hop artist as well as an entrepreneur and mentor.
I'm Tracy Zeke. I am a publicist in Oklahoma City, and I work with a lot of arts organizations. I also am a children's book author.
Hi, I'm Hannah Royce. I'm a creative entrepreneur, and I also started a women's empowerment event called Confidence Con. I currently work for Downtown Oklahoma City Partnership as their social media coordinator, and I'm also the secretary of the newly formed Oklahoma City Pride Alliance.
Right on. Excellent panel. So the topic today is we want to discuss what it's like to represent yourself on social media as a creative entrepreneur. All of y'all are creative entrepreneurs, but in different ways. Some of you have to represent yourselves. Some of you represent others. Some of you represent organizations that maybe are an extension of yourself. And so we want to delve into what that feels like, what that looks like, and just have a great conversation that might inspire other entrepreneurs to explore their own way that they represent themselves. So I want to get it kicked off by asking Jacoby. I know that you're an artist. I'm pretty familiar with artists. Tell me a little bit about, tell me about how you approach representing yourself online.
It's really changed because I had a name change in January where I went to my actual first and the middle name. And the reason for that was my purpose as an artist was a lot more real and authentic to me as opposed to being in kind of like a character. It was more so this is just who I am, conveying myself. So it started there where I had to be authentic, and then everything else kind of sprawls from being authentic, the authenticity of it. So from there, it just becomes a matter of who am I, who do I see myself as, and what can I act like to embody that, as opposed to trying to base my social media presence off of what people want to see. Is more so off who am I, what message do I want to get across, what's my purpose, and what connects where I'm at to my purpose.
Awesome. And so could you hone in a little bit about what that purpose is now versus, I guess, how is that conveyed better now that you're Jacoby Ryan than it was when you were fresh?
Jacoby Ryan was a part of kind of focusing that purpose. But I mean, now, as you know, the 52 and 365 campaign where I'm putting out a new song, video, and podcast every week, a lot of content has to come out. So I didn't want to oversaturate myself with personal things or with, of course, with the music, because that's oversaturating as well. So I wanted to have a equal balance of both personality and business, so to say. So for me, it's just been a matter of being cognizant and aware of how much I'm posting, what I'm posting about, and really keeping my content focused to what my purpose is. So my purpose right now is this 52 and 365. So the content that I engage with, the hashtags that I use, they're all in that same vein. It's going to go with that week's songs topic, to where I'm not getting off topic and talking about the numerous debates and arguments you can get on social media and getting myself involved in that.
Gotcha. So kind of cutting it down to be authentic, but show people, cut out all the other stuff that could be distracting or miscommunicate.
And I got it from a book where The Conscious Capitalism is where the book that I got it from, where it talks about every company has to operate from its purpose. Every decision should be made with the purpose in mind. Every decision should be guided by the purpose of your organization, so that you always keep in mind what's going on and what you're trying to get to, and don't get distracted with the short-term gains and short-term distractions that you can see at any time.
Awesome. I want to segue over to Hannah Royce because I like talking about balancing business and personality and authenticity. I think that really makes me think of probably a lot of the communication you have to work with for ConCon and things like that. Could you tell us a little about ConCon and how you represent it online?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted Confidence Con after seeing and experiencing other creative kind of boutique events, and conferences were so hot about 4 years ago, and they've always been a thing, right, where we gather and we like to talk to each other and look each other in the eye, and it's a thing that humans enjoy. But I experienced one in LA that really transformed how I saw the ability to connect to women in this digital realm that we're in. And that is by like shaking them out of their comfort zones and bringing them to where we do dance parties and all of that. But it's kind of fun if you scroll back to the very first photo for Confidence Con's Instagram. I started that Instagram so intentionally, like with this thought of what it could be and what it would be, that every post is something that was so intentional. And I'm a content curator, so of course that's like what I wanted it to be, but I was literally creating something out of nothing. I could only tell people about it and show people about it in this visual way to make them think that Confidence Con was going to be something that they had to experience, and that was why they had to buy their ticket. And so there's this really cool gal, Ingrid Fittel-Lee, who talks about the theory of joy and aesthetics and how really these tangible things really do bring pleasure to us. And that's why we love social media. That's why people love Instagram so much, is because yes, it does, light up that part of our brain that creates dopamine and yada yada. And we could go into the being mindful about how we use social media and all of that. But at the time, because Confidence Con, I knew it was going to be so beautiful in person, I had to literally create that on our Instagram, and it's still like people will follow us from LA or different places, and they're like, "You're in Oklahoma?" They're very confused. But through inspiration online and kind of seeing the really tasteful, kind of simple way that people use Instagram to create a vibe, right? To create a whole world inside of 3 photos at a time in a grid. So I guess I got really specific about what Confidence Con would look like. And I created it online first, and then in person, and then kept doing that back and forth and back and forth. And we didn't shy away from using cuss words or, lyrics that we knew might have been applicable, or people's real life stories, or sometimes just a daily mantra to, give a little bit more than buy your ticket, come to this event. It happens once a year. So we even have an online Slack channel where we take that a step further, and we help women connect after the conference and that sort of thing. So all of that to say, Confidence Con was kind of birthed in the online world to create real life connection in a time when that's kind of few and far between, especially locally. I think we know people online and then we meet them, but maybe we don't go out to coffee with them, or like you were saying, taking someone to coffee and just talking to them and looking them in the eye, that creates those connections. Tracy was actually a speaker at our first year of ConCon, and we've gone on to be friends and past clients to each other, or ask for help when we need it and that sort of thing. And I think it's those type of relationships that creatives need to learn, that makes your online promotion more authentic, right? Because you're meeting these people, but you're not actually saying, "Oh, we should really go get coffee sometime." You're actually following through and doing it, and that's kind of what we did with ConCon too. We said we're going to create this thing, and we did it, and we've come back and made it better each year, and yeah.
Well, I agree. I think one thing that is always true is people are so drawn to authenticity, and I understand why you'd make the change for you as an artist. I think it's really fascinating, the idea of creating authenticity for something that doesn't exist yet, but it is totally real in your head, and so being authentic to this idea. Well, Tracy, I want to hear, I know that you work with clients and do a lot of high-level strategy at Bumbershoot, things like that. What's it like trying to create that authenticity for somebody else that's not you, and it's not an idea inside your head? Can you speak to that?
I think the interesting parallel here, and I wonder if that was intentional on Dennis's part, was like the authenticity with the 3 of us, because I don't think you're going to find 3 more people who are willing just to talk about all of it. But that's really important to me. It's important to me with my clients as well. So my personal social media is me. It's very me. And the reason it's like that is because I don't want people to reach out to me to try to work with me if we're not going to fit. like, I don't want that kind of work. I want the kind of work that I believe in, that I can easily talk about and brag about and tell my son about, and be proud of it. So I set up my world so people know me, because I think it's easier that way. They don't waste any time, and I don't waste any time. For clients, same thing. I try to get them to tell as much about their truth, and most of it I don't do a lot of like social strategy. I have a direction, but I think there are better people for it, and I usually work with them. It's just, Bumbershoot is just back to being Tracy Zeke only. I don't have employees, and I do all of the work myself, and it's gorgeous, and I love it, and I'm back to being like super joyful about my work once again, like I was when I started. But it's coming up on 10 years this year, and I am here to say that like I probably know less now than I knew when I started, or at least willing to admit that, right? I think when you have clients and you're trying to get them to talk about anything, to reporters, to each other, internally, externally, I do a lot of messaging for clients, and I think that finding the truth and then building on that, instead of here's what we're going to create for you, it's more like, tell me about you, tell me your truth. Let's put that in words that convey what you really want them to gain from that. And we do that with all kinds of messaging, that eventually could make it to social, for example. But for the most part, it's just how do we talk about ourselves as a company, as a client, like how do they talk about themselves, and then how do I help them shape the words to where it's getting into the ears of the right audience in a way that conveys what they actually mean, because the words that they're saying sometimes aren't matching up with what people are hearing.
Right, that makes sense. So have you seen situations, could you speak to a situation where maybe you've really gotten that right, and how other people, the audience responded to it, and maybe speak to a situation where maybe that wasn't quite nailed? You don't necessarily have to name any names, but can you kind of speak to how people react when you really get the messaging right, you really convey, authentically who this person is, whether it's you or someone else?
And honestly, on the getting it wrong thing, if I've gotten it wrong, I've gone back and fixed it, so I don't have anything kind of hanging in my head that I can pull. I'll probably remember tomorrow and text you.
What's an example of a big win where you're like, man, we did this and it was so real, and people just...
just really, it's all of it. All of your words matter when you're putting them together to tell your story. So when you, even writing a press release or a typical media pitch, everything you're saying is eventually going to get into print somewhere, right? We had a little bicycling event yesterday. I recognized some of you here, so I handled the publicity for that. It's a Safe Streets group of people trying to organize to get streets safe for cyclists and pedestrians in Oklahoma City. Part of that messaging that we, shared with the reporters who were doing the story was what we wanted, someone to walk away with. So we just condensed it. We just didn't put a whole press release out. We said, here's a quote, here's a couple of facts, and here are the, studies they're pulled from. And then come to the event. And people came to the event, they heard more words, but all of the things we wanted people to know, all the study, 35 people out of 10,000 people die on the roads, either pedestrian, on their way to work every year. I mean, it's a lot, it's a lot of people dying in our market because of this. So I think making sure that we drop the thing, it's just being really intentional about what you're sharing, so the words that you're putting on paper or putting in an email get conveyed in the story. That's mainly what I do as the earned media side.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that event. I've seen it everywhere, and you can get so much from the people posting about it. It's not from an Instagram account about it, but it's actually gone into other people in the community, and I know the story. No one's writing anything big and long. I mean, some people are, but I get the feeling of it. I think that when you nail that authenticity, it becomes something that other people can share, which I think is really, especially with that example, y'all have really done that.
We were, saying that the idea, the goal of something like that is to create something. So if it's volunteers, people saying we've got to push this, we've got to push this. So you create something joyful and positive, and that everyone wants to jump on, and then you want to make it so joyful and so positive that someone takes it and runs with it, so you don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
So make something so awesome that someone wants to take it and make it their own and put their name on it. And you're like, go to town.
I love it. Okay, I got one more question for you, Tracy, before we move on. We're talking a lot about online presence, and but we're also talking about creativity, like IRL creativity. So in the things that you create. Tell me about the thought process between I'm sitting here and I'm in my creative space and mainly being there and then getting it out to the world and communicating about it. What's that look like, that transition? Do they affect each other in some way?
I approach everything the way it needs to be approached. So I don't have a method that I use for everyone. But one thing that I try to always do is sit down and just like listen to what someone has to tell me about themselves. And then I ask a bunch of questions. I was meeting with someone today. He was like, I want to do, XYZ. I want these goals. And I'm like, all right, so let's go backwards from there. Let's start with your goal and then let's work backwards. What do we need to do? What might be missing? And so then back in that area is when you can start asking questions like, well, do you deserve it? What are the proof points? How do you prove that through what you've done so far? If someone asks this question, what's your answer? And so you start, breaking it down backwards. So by the time you do that, you have this kind of scaffold built under what it is you're trying to say, and it can't be knocked down.
That's perfect. So just having a really solid foundation. Maybe the last episode of Art and Victory, we ended up a lot on your why. Like if you really know why you're doing it, it's easy to talk about it. But I'm kind of curious, Jacoby, same question. In writing songs and in rapping, recording, etc. Is there ever a time where maybe the social media world affects your creativity world, or I'm sure vice versa, but is there ever a time where creativity is actually affected by your thought of communicating it?
For sure. I think that's kind of one of the biggest things we struggle with as creatives as it is do we want to create what people want? Do we want to supply the demand, or do we want to create the demand and give them what we want to give because we know it's valuable for them?
Right.
And I think that's where it came down for me, is the value. Where is the value at? After authenticity, for me, the next most important thing is value. So I want to get my authentic purpose in order and be clear on that, and then from there, what's valuable to other people about that, and convey that value that way. So for me, as in recording, I've kind of found it as it's better for me to separate the two processes where I'm expressing it, and I see the social media side as marketing, and the recording, writing, that's just like the production side. So the production, I read Seth Godin, The Green Cow, or The Purple Cow. He talks about a lot of what people should do is put the marketing and the product development to where you're not spending money on getting the message out. You're spending on putting the value in the product, because once the value's in the product and the person gets the product, they, like she said, they spread the word, like with the cycle event themselves. You don't have to spend money on investing, because you put all the money and the work into the value, and the value spreads itself. So that's where I try to come from an authentic place in my music, because I know people who listen to it are listening for authenticity and things that they can relate with. In the human experience, if I'm real with my experience, it's going to be relatable to everybody. So I try to, long story long, I try to make sure I keep my authenticity at the forefront. And then once that's done, then we look at, okay, how can we best convey this value that we've already defined and articulated through our purpose and in the marketing side.
I see. So, that sounds like very similar to Tracy. You've built a strong scaffold and you're like, I know this is who I am and this is what I am, then the communication becomes a lot easier. You don't have to get too wrapped up with how to, get likes or
absolutely
followers or whatever.
And even a more concentrated case where I put a video out every week. And of course, I go back and look at my analytics after each video and see, okay, who responded to what are the characteristics of this video, what worked, what didn't. And what I've done now is, before I went into it, just trying to make a video that best described the song concept. Whereas I started seeing how things were, I started seeing, okay, well-lit videos are most engaged with, videos with plots that have a story to develop, and then also being specific with my targeting. So I do the song, make it authentically, don't think about who I'm giving it to, make the song, do the video. When I think of the video though, that's where I connect the audience, where it's like, it may be a song about poverty, impoverished neighborhoods. So maybe I want to do the video with students at a school who aren't getting the lunches they need, or teachers who aren't getting the salaries they need. And then when I market it, just market it to teachers, to where you're giving them what they need already. You don't have to make these guesses about, oh, maybe they'll like it, and spend all this money blindly and waste a lot of money trying to get to these eyes that don't care about it. And you can actually specifically think about who am I going towards and go straight to them and put the value in it for them.
That's great. So it sounds like there's a part of the creative process that, you know, it sounds like for your music especially, it's like it just is what it is, and then as it gets closer to like being seen, there's more consideration going into like how it's presented to make it the most successful. Okay, Absolutely. That's very interesting. Hannah, in those same lines, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know you run a lot of different types of social media accounts, so any examples you want to pull from?
Yes. I mean, all of that is great stuff. You got to know where you're going, where you're headed, and what it looks like to market it to the audiences that, you know, want to hear. At the end of the day, all social media is, and like the way we're trying to present things is the way we want to hear them. That's how we should present them, right? You shouldn't present things that you, I guess what I'm trying to say is when I write a caption, whether it's for like Midtown or Confidence Con, you know, I think about who's reading this and kind of obviously the vibe of whatever that account is. But I do, as much as I take photos for a living, I also write captions for a living. And these are like short, you know, things that we want to immediately resound with someone. Usually we prefer to elicit some sort of emotion in them. I'm a super duper empath. I'm emotional, like I could cry at the drop of a hat or laugh, like cackle witch for no reason, whatever it might be. But I guess feelings are involved when creating stuff, and I think that's probably true for any creative. But separating out the strategy is obviously important to have, you know, a calendar and planning and things like that go into it. But really, it goes into another layer when you think about feelings and emotion, because I believe that when you post something that you're just trying to push out, get out, post it now kind of thing, just post something to post something, people totally feel it. Right. So my social strategy is always super woo-woo. It's like Tracy getting to the bottom of like, who are you as a person? And like, do you have good moral values? Do you believe in fiduciary duties? Like, what is your, you know, what's your meat and potatoes, so that I actually know you and that I trust you and I can put your message out there. That's the same way I feel about when I put a message out there, constantly crafting words and images and ones that I enjoy consuming. So not even just myself, but obviously, like Jacoby said, looking back at what works, what doesn't. I've been loving going to talk to these business alliances about like what performs well, because previously downtown OKC had contractors doing that, so they weren't as like hands-on with, say, our business alliances in each sub-district. So I'll be like, dogs and coffee and skyline photos, they perform really well. And people are just like, oh. And I'm like, so maybe as a business, you just incorporate more of like your district and just outside and just things that people like. People are gonna start to take to your message more because you're just a normal person. You do run a business, but you like dogs and coffee and skyline photos just like everyone else in the world. So like, there's a sort of feeling and emotion that you just gotta like plug into just straight up human connection. Like, that's why it's social media, and that's why. I'm sorry. Exactly.
There's a lot of good dogs in downtown Norman. A lot of good dogs around here.
Exactly. Like I didn't even take the photo. Like I reposted Stevie the Dude. He's a golden doodle that lives in Midtown.
Aww.
And has like 12,000 followers. And his mom and dad are really good content creators, because like we reposted that photo and it was immediately like 800 likes. And I'm like, see, like we gotta have more Stevie the Dudes. DOOD, by the way. But anyway, so it's just like, it's connecting, like it's humor, it's sad things, it's like, I don't know if any of you follow Jen Gotch, but she's been a huge vulnerability like queen in my world to just like watch as she started Shop Bando, which is like any funky girl you know has a Shop Bandeau like notebook on her desk and pen and stickers and like loves to plan in her Bandeau planner. And I actually saw her speak at Create Cultivate in 15. I always met Fudge that year. I'm bad with times, like time isn't linear. But anyway, so I saw her talk, and she's an LA gal, and she's been really open about her anxiety and depression. But she'll also post like these trash can, she's in like the garage in front of like the dumpsters, and she'll just set her phone like on the floor and record these dance videos of herself, and they're like these trash can dumpster sessions. There's even a really funny one where someone's like opening the garage door as she's dancing, and she like runs and grabs her phone. So anyway, all of that to say is she's just super fucking vulnerable. Like, she tells it like it is, whether she's like feeling these sad days that she just like can't get over, but in the midst of it all, she's the CEO of Bandeau, and like being really honest with all of her coworkers and staff and all of that, just really lays it on the line. And she's kind of flaky, like she'll admit that. She's like, well, you know, sometimes like mental health, it rules other things, and I have to push things off if I'm not okay in here. So I think all of that to say, like, whether I'm managing Midtown or Confidence Con or the HQ studio where I get to like be a bit more funky. I also have a Fancy Royce account that is my old Instagram, like personal Instagram, because when I started my own business, I had Egg in a Glass, which is what it was called when I first started like my creative agency stuff. And so I kept like my personal account separate from my business account, changed my business account to just Hannah Royce because it was just me, like I didn't have staff or anything. So Fancy Royce has become my future account for like my artist stuff and model. I also rap and like have never put anything out there in the world. So like these are things that I am fueled by. I'm fueled by music and art and community, and I think that's all people want to know because they're all fueled by the same things, like most of us are. So when it comes to your social plan, you have to like, yes, you have to know what you're about, but you also have to know what you fear. And once you know what you fear, you can tackle that. And even if it takes you like 10 years to put out a mixtape or whatever, like eventually you'll get there, even if you're knocking down the doors of patriarchy first. So, so yeah, just be vulnerable, know what you're about, know what your clients are about. If you're working with other people in the digital realm, like people are gonna see right through your bullshit. So we have to be honest, and like that's how good guerrilla movements like what happened yesterday in Oklahoma City will happen and will continue to happen. And I think it's super important to just like bang down some doors right now.
It'll happen on the 15th and the 19th. It'll happen again on the 15th and the 19th if you missed it.
Yeah, no doubt. And you know, sometimes I end up speaking to somebody about social media, they're asking me for advice, and I think that they're really looking at it through a lens of, they're almost asking the question in the way of like, what do I need to post to get people to like me? And the answer is you need to just communicate well, right? Like it's the same as real life communication. If you're authentic with people, they like that. When you don't just talk, but you also listen, which is what looking at metrics is, you know, well, how do people respond to that? That's listening, you know? So if you just, I find generally if you're a good communicator, that's what it takes. But I've also found there are some challenges with social media. You know, like I definitely communicate a lot better in this environment than I do on social media. And there was a long time where I was really bad at it. I really struggled to communicate on social media. I was kind of all over the place. Do you guys, is there anything that you found really challenging about just the format of social media that's made communication a little more challenging?
I mean, humanness.
Oh, use the mic.
Yes. I maybe outside of the realm of kind of what we're talking about specifically, but I think just humanness. It's training us to tell someone something, and then it's not fostering anything, and that's why Confidence Con, things like that matter because we need to communicate with each other and not at each other, and I think that. as things divide further and further, who knows? How are we gonna connect people back again? And because we're training them to just, this is how I feel, and everybody else is garbage if you don't feel like I feel. So you're not considering anyone's experiences. You're not considering anyone's their journey to that thing, because we're all pretty much alike. We may have some parts where we don't Venn diagram over or where we do and we don't, right? But I think that's the problem with it, is that it just is, it's telling and not talking with, it's talking at.
Any of y'all, any other panelists have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, the listening part is probably the most valuable part, in my opinion. Just not making it self-centered, not being self-indulged, but it being more so driven by the value that you're providing for people. And for example, and I think all this is solved when we do the inner work of finding the purpose. When we look at if you ask somebody, hey, what's wrong with you, and they say I had a bad day at work, and then you ask them why. Usually after 3 or 4 whys, you get to the meat of the problem, and it usually doesn't have anything to do with work or school or whatever they had a bad day at. And whatever that experience is, once they dive deep into that last layer of what the real why is, that why is usually relatable to every human being, because we all go through that emotion at some point in some way. So I feel like if we can do the inner work to find that purpose, which I read that it comes in clarity, then detachment, and then equilibrium, where you gain clarity by looking at your purpose and asking yourself, why am I doing this? What am I getting out of this? How do I need to do this? What are some deal breakers? What has to be done? And then we have certain clarity of what our purpose is. So now we have detachment from any solution any result. So if I'm on social media and I have clarity as far as what my purpose is, who I am as an authentic person, I'm detached from the conversations that are detached from my goal and my purpose. I have no time to waste on that. And also, what I do put out, now I can look at, okay, this is my purpose. How can I best relate to these people that I want to talk to? While I think it's also, like she said, like Hannah said, it's a very delicate balance in making sure that you're prioritizing your authenticity first, but also providing that authenticity in a way that's mindful of how people talk and want to be talked to. And like she said, we're all human beings. We want to be taught the same way. So I think just being selfless in our authenticity, to put it shortly and succinctly, I think is important.
Hannah, have you found any challenges with social media and communicating, and tried to find any workarounds for those challenges?
Planning ahead is really nice. When you want to be on certain platforms that maybe aren't your jam. Twitter is not so much my jam. So, scheduling, finding out where your weak spots are, so that you can automate them maybe. And then I just want to touch too on this thought of being engaged and being, there are a lot of ways maybe being authentic isn't your jam, but you want to know what your audience is interested in knowing from you. And I don't necessarily want you to get on Instagram stories, because one of my pet peeves is going hey guys, it's me. I just want to know what you want to hear from me. Let's not do it in that way. But I think that it is fair for you, if you're starting your own thing, maybe you sell a product, I don't care what it is, music, or you can do it in a creative way. Instagram stories now has the poll thing or the questions, or I love these new ways of interacting, because I do think people do want to be in your DMs, but not necessarily in a bad way or bad connotation, but just to talk to you, just to get outside of the post that you just had on your feed, and maybe they don't want to publicly comment something. But I do think direct message, and these are things that really activate your audience in a new way that gives them a closer relationship to you at the end of the day. Even when someone mentions Midtown in our stories or whatever, I comment back and I'm love it, have so much fun today, blah blah blah, and they're yes, thank you. It gives them this feeling of there's somebody listening, watching, responding, talking to me. There's someone behind this that's creating it. And that has been a challenge, because when I was just managing accounts for local businesses, I was on the other side of that, trying to to know their story and to speak authentically for them. And this district thing has been fun because it's not exactly that. At the end of the day, I'm not selling anything. So my main goal really is connection, and like I'm getting ready to spotlight a bunch of business owners and like different things that we've never done as district accounts, you know? So finding new ways to engage with people that really makes them feel like, wow, I know that person. Like I keep going back to this, but like that Cheers feeling, like you want to know everyone knows your name, and like that's why we love Oklahoma and this vibe that we can know each other online, but we can, like I said, like connect in real life, or maybe, you know, that direct message gets us to coffee eventually, or however it works out, but then we end up collaborating, and then this creates a partnership, and then we do a social media campaign and we get a bunch of views because it was authentic, and whatever, however that happens. But don't be afraid to like open yourself up for people to talk to you because they want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So talking about the real life experience, we obviously communicate about our creativity not just on social media. Do you ever feel like the fact that you do communicate about it on social media affects the way you communicate about it in person, whether it's in a good way or a bad way?
Sometimes you can get something out. I do know that sometimes you can get a thought out, or you can get something out that you need to get out of the way so you can get to the other stuff. And for me, that's what Twitter does that for me. I can get stuff out of me that I need to get out of me so I can get back to like what I need to do. It's like, you know what I mean?
If I'm on Twitter, that's what I use it for.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that on your personal Twitter or more for brands as well?
That's just my personal.
For your personal
yeah,
one?
it's my personal.
I was just wondering if it's like, man, I'm so mad about sales last quarter. Like, get that out of my system now. I can go. Yeah, so more personal.
Yeah, but I find that. But I also think that I don't know. That's just me personally. That's what I like about it. Is because you do get that out of the way. Because sometimes to be creative and use your creativity, you've got a lot of stuff in the way of it.
So it's an extra avenue maybe to express yourself, and that'll, like, by getting to express something that's bothering you, it kind of clears your head to, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know that.
Like I saw a snake yesterday, and I needed to tell everyone.
Right.
It's a good place to do it.
I got you. Or like, there's a dog, you know, like same thing, but on social media.
Snake, and I had to let everyone know.
I love it. Okay, cool. Anybody else? Jacoby, you got any thoughts?
I'll add to that just repurposing. I know it can be an issue as far as in real life versus social media marketing, but I mean, maybe, I know one thing that I'm looking at doing with the 52 and 365 thing is I'm putting out artwork for each song every week on social media that I'm using to market it, but at the end of it, I'm gonna sell a book with it, has this actual book of the artwork, you know, so maybe if we have Twitter, we tweet, like if it's for the cycle event or the cycle cause, if we tweet facts or certain things about the cause, and then after that month or whatever the campaign is for, you repurpose that into an ebook, or you repurpose that into a podcast, or you repurpose you look at every tweet you tweeted out last year and you kind of put them into these different categories, and you say, okay, maybe I can do a podcast on this category for May, a podcast on this category for June, and I don't have to do any work on finding information because I've already done everything, and just repurposing everything we've already done, I think is another way that we could mesh the two worlds.
I love that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that makes me happy. One of my favorite Instagram accounts is Nathan W. Pyle, Strange Planet. Have you seen those? It's like these alien comics, and it's just commentary on real life. Yes, yeah, I love those things, and he's just releasing a book, a physical book, and I think it really ties into, like, you know, people generally don't want all this to just exist in cyberspace, you know, like we want it to be real, tangible, or, you know, with your Midtown account, like I want to feel like I'm really a part of a community, and like that person who's commenting back, I could see him at the coffee shop, like that feels good. I think people sense that, but I don't mean to interrupt. Well, do you have some thoughts on?
Yeah, that's. I don't remember what the question is.
Answer whatever question you want.
Well, I mean, anything you say is going to be awesome. No, we're really just thinking if there's any way that what you say online ends up affecting what you communicate about in real life. Do they interact with each other?
Well, I love that, and I love that. I think that is one of the reasons DOKC hired me, like you said. Like, they knew that people already know me, like I'm kind of in the community already, keeping my finger on the pulse of things, so they did want that, like Hannah could walk in and they know she does the Auto Alley account or the whatever. And I think I I love this idea because I actually was just looking up, I've never really called myself a photographer in all the years of like creative stuff that I've done. I've been hired for like I've been hired for that thing, but it's one of those things that I've never seen my stuff printed or like, really like printed my pictures to have them in my house even, or things like that. So that was actually something I was doing the other day, just to like kind of appreciate myself. I'm gonna get some framed and put them in my office in a cool little grid, of course, because that's how my brain works now. But I think that with this, so I recently went to Alt Summit, and that's where I heard the joyful concept of like this concept of joy, and I didn't tap into that too much, but basically it's that women and like our feminine aesthetic, which has been kind of played down and trivial in history, in the course of history, especially in like high design, and I can't think of the interior designer, but I know that somebody, I'm gonna butcher his name, I can't think of it, but anyway, he basically called her an inferior desecrator because she used like all these floral patterns and color, and it was like childlike, and that's also due to like cultural bias. So like the things that come out of Africa and India that women are making that are always colorful, that always bring joy to anyone who buys them, which now we do. Mexico, like Siempre, like things that we find and like covet because it's colorful and it's bright. These are also the things that have been like over time kind of played down, like that doesn't matter. So I've often felt like, hey, you're an Instagram like content curator, and one day this is not going to matter because it's not like art and it's not tangible, that sort of thing. But it is, and like I'm not going to downplay myself because I'm good at what I do. So all of that to say, the like joy that we find through public art, through music, through these things that connect us, color and life, and those things make us feel more safe. So there's also a painter, a female that painted, marginalized schools that had a low attendance rate, and they started coming to school when she painted a rainbow entrance for them to walk into every day, because it just made them all happy and like excited to go to school. So these things that we get to do at DOKC were super aligned with what I care about, which is placemaking and inclusivity and art, and how our downtown could look in 10 years. I just see such a cool future for it, and that is because of aesthetics, and because those things bring us joy. They make us feel safe. They make us feel connected to maybe a culture or a religion or something that we're not that familiar with. And so I think that's why people love social media so much, is because they get to open up and like see other worlds without having to break down that barrier. But like my privilege as a white woman is breaking down that barrier and making sure I'm asking questions and doing it in real life too. So that is a way that I practice what I preach in real life too, is like I'm not just like tweeting when I'm mad or whatever, not that you do so much, but like I'm out here doing the social change and justice work too, like making sure that when we do see, we're really rowdy when we see like zero representation or very little representation. We have a spreadsheet, and like we'll email it to whatever organization or business doesn't have any women performing at their shows, or whatever it might be. We're like, hey, we have this list, and it's broken up into women by what they do and their industry, and like you should have more women at your whatever. So yeah. I think there are ways that you can use social media to further your efforts, no matter what they may be, even if that's collaborating or calling people out on their shit or whatever. But it's how you can make real life change through the social media world.
I love it. That's beautiful, man. Y'all know a lot about social media.
Can I add one more caveat?
I would love that.
In anything we talk about today, just follow Beyonce's lead. Could we talk about, I mean, last year she had her Coachella show. That I just learned about this maybe a week or so ago. She had a Coachella performance where she got paid, I think, $4 million, and Ariana Grande got paid like $9 million for the same time and everything. People got mad about it. And then the next day it came out that Beyonce had negotiated with Coachella and said, okay, I'll take less on the front end to make sure I can own all the rights to my performance. And out of that performance, she went back and she made a Netflix documentary about the performance. So, and she ended up making like tens of millions of dollars on that, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, that's just another way of looking at it, whereas something in real life can also be used in social media and vice versa.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. It's interesting how, that's repurposing the opposite direction, right? Taking in a real life experience and putting it on the internet instead of vice versa. Super interesting stuff. I do want to take a moment. I know we got some guests here, and so we've had a lot of awesome discussion, but we want to be good listeners to everyone in our audience. Do y'all have any questions for these panelists? Anyone specific or just general questions that you feel like we haven't hit on but needs to be talked about?
He actually just said what I was going to say when you're talking about repurposing. The number one thing I was thinking about was how fucking brilliant Beyonce is. Because she was like,
Which
yes.
we think about often.
Because basically she did Coachella a huge favor.
Exactly.
I was like, I'll come
She did
perform
the
at your
massage.
thing. However, I'm gonna make bajillions of dollars off of this, and not just. I don't always look at things like money is energy, right? And so the energetic impact that she has made on the world for people to see the culture and people to see where this beautiful movement comes from, like this organic, beautiful, that energetic impact is far beyond the millions of, it's far beyond the zeros. Do you know what I mean? It's something that we're going to tell our kids about and our grandkids about, and it's something that we're going to have them watch and see, like, look at this, the first time a black female was a headline of a very hippie, white, privileged, festival, and she got up there and she was like, not only am I going to perform, but I'm going to bring all of my history and all of my culture and all of this wisdom that I'm from and bring it to you, and then I'm going to put it in your living room, like, for you to watch over and over and over, and repurpose the shit out of that. She will, that energetically, not even just financially, energetically, that ripple effect is just, it's far beyond, it's far reaching. And I loved what you said about repurposing your content. We have a designer in our studio who, weed brands are like a big thing right now, and so he's just like cranking out all this cool branding for weed stuff, and he was like, well, if they don't like it, they will. If they don't like it, they will. And we have to do that because we're expected to create so much content so quickly. I don't give a shit about social media. I'm terrible. Like, anything I know about social media, I know because my lady, but it is a great way to convey your message to people. And so, as far as like social media goes, I like to get an energetic exchange with someone. So I teach mindfulness and meditation and kind of different viewpoints and gratitude and things like that. So I like to push buttons with people like, okay, I'm going up to the rooftop, I'm gonna have a solar break, and I'm gonna come down and I just had a great idea. So I'll share that process with people. Hopefully, you talk about the IRL return, hopefully getting that same kind of method going with other people. Okay, if I take a mindful break and I clear my head and I breathe and I stretch, what kind of creativity can I come up with? So what do you guys do for your practices when maybe you're stuck or your head is so full of all the shit that you have to do because you got to put out all this content? I look at Hannah runs I swear 25 Instagram accounts. It's so true. She has so many that she's responsible for. And I'm just sun roller, right? I've got one, and that's overwhelming. She logged me into the HQ Studio on Instagram so that I can do sun roller and maybe a little bit of HQ Studio. And I'm I don't know, it's too much.
I love it.
And so what do you guys do to clear your mindset so that you can be creative and keep producing? Because you said, you're putting out a shit ton of content right now. Do you ever feel like an overwhelm and pressure of like, I have to produce, I have to produce, I have to produce, or what?
Cool. I'm going to rephrase the question for the audio. Thank you. I wish we would have had that on mic because that was all brilliant. That was a lot of great commentary and a question. I want to summarize the commentary, just basically saying, in regards to the Beyonce thing, you know, it's not just about the money and the great business move. Money's energy, and so that going into everybody's living room. I mean, the culture, the stuff that she stands for. By being smart about how she represents her art on creativity and even just the business that surrounds that puts that energy into the world in a big way. I think the next commentary was mainly about just, as content creators, sometimes you have so much on your plate. I mean, you're doing a song a week with videos, like that's nuts to me. I have no idea how you're doing that. I think you're a magician. So how do you not go insane? How do you stay grounded and clear your head and stay in the zone creatively? What are your practices?
Man, I'm gonna sound repetitive and redundant, but really it's just the whole CDE, clarity, detachment, and equilibrium, where when you do the clarity, the inner work as far as why am I doing this, what's this for, how does this look if it's successful, and when I do that, then I detach myself from anything that doesn't have to do with what I'm trying to get to and how I get there. So if my purpose is putting out a song every week, and I'm having thoughts that don't align with putting out a song that week, and I ain't put out a song that week, it's like, okay, I know for a fact I don't need to be thinking about that. Let me get back on straight on. And of course, that comes with discipline and things that I damn sure haven't mastered yet, but I'm trying to. And then, so when I'm detached from the results, I'm detached from the distractions, then my equilibrium, it's easy for me to keep my equilibrium because now I know where I want to go, and I only need to focus my energy, my synergy on whatever is lifting that up and building that. And also planning was a big thing because I damn sure wouldn't be making a new song every week and a new video. So planning was a big thing. It took, 3 or 4 years to do all the material that I'm putting out. And then at the end of the day, I think when you know your purpose and you're a purposeful person and you live out of purpose, you understand that you have to do things when you're not comfortable, when you're scared people aren't going to like it, when people probably won't like it, when it may not be the best thing to do. But it's just a matter of, as the great Nipsey Hussle said, who recently passed, it's a marathon. It's just a matter of trying, failing, learning, trying again. My favorite quote is "fail better." And just understand failing is inevitable, and embrace it and fail better the next time, and fail better the next time is my goal personally. But and also as my answer is probably shorter than theirs because I'm a creative, but if I don't feel creativity or I don't feel inspired, I don't do shit. I'm not gonna force it. But as an artist, I have that luxury as opposed to them. They have businesses they have to run, so I know that's probably a lot more.
I know that when I make space for my creativity, and I have to do, it's a lot of writing, but a lot of times I'll have someone say, obviously we want publicity for this thing we're doing, let's say. So I look at the thing and I'm like, well, you don't get it for that. So what else can we do? And then we have to sit there and we have to get creative. And we have to come up with an idea that matches what they want, what they're trying to do, and make it say what they're trying to do with their event or with their specific thing, and then create the thing, and then start plugging in the players to make the thing come to life, and then we have to do all that in 24 hours. So in order to do that, the goal, what I want is this goal. I make an enormous, ridiculous goal, and I think I'm okay if I get part of the way there to that goal. But I said it here. I'm like, if we get 8 chefs and every chef has a pig, I don't know. I'm just saying like that. And then if it boils down to there's a guy with some bacon, it's still okay because it's still moving the pork game forward. I don't know. I'm just using pork as an example. So anyway, but I do that. I make space for it. I like to meditate. I do a specific meditation that I love, and I do that. But I also like to get inspiration, and I get inspiration from big, ridiculous art. And so if I can go and see something insane that I've never seen or wouldn't know how to even start to create, that can do it for me, and that can get to a part of my brain that does new stuff. Cool. Thank you. You're welcome.
I also like to breathe. Sometimes it, happens because my Apple Watch tells me to. Sometimes it happens because I have a little YouTube channel that I'll click on at my desk when I just need to reset and ground my feet down and put both feet on the floor and close my eyes for a minute. But it also does happen, the part what did you say? It makes me do cool stuff, or helps me do new stuff when you see big, beautiful art. That's how I feel when I rap all the words to like one of my favorite songs. It's like this really fulfilling feeling, and it's not work, and it's just something that flows. So I love music, and I close my door a lot more than anyone at our office because I'm usually listening to music really loud. So music is a big thing that throughout the day is just constantly soothing me, like constantly getting me back to my work, constantly taking me back to the place I was. And 9 to 5 isn't really, like I never stop working for DOKC, but I have been for the past 6 months really finding that delicate balance of like still giving Hannah Royce and Confidence Con and like these other events and things that we're doing at the HQ, and then also like jumping in feet first into Pride this year. That's been a really big thing. And so at the end of the day, like you said, like the purpose is why we do the hard stuff. Like it's why we wake up and we keep going and we do the things we have to do so that we can in turn do the things we really want to do. So
That's a great answer, and that was a great question. It's also great. I really do it. We're gonna make you panelists next time. That was a really good question, just about how to do it that personally, and it's interesting. Y'all had pretty different answers. I'm glad you said music, though. That's a good answer. Maybe you could.
Meditation, 100%.
I love it. Maybe get some Jacoby Ryan on those playlists. I bet Jacoby would love it. So in the world of web and social, we've talked a lot about the social. Tell me about the world of the web.
Great question.
Okay,
I personally, my website is a Yellow Pages ad, right? Like that's what it's for, so people can find you and see that you're legitimate and you're a real thing, and here's how I contact you. Look around, vibe feels like me, and I'm looking at a list of clients, and then I'll call them, send an email, reach out somehow, and that's why my website exists. It's just a place where they can get a feel for me, and then reach out if they feel like it. I don't give any advice or any big tips or anything like that on this site because everybody's different.
It's a beautiful business card that anybody can get to.
It's a business card that moves around, and there's a video on it with umbrellas. It's pretty fantastic.
Nice. I'll
Ryan
check that out.
Tomlinson did it. It's very good.
That's awesome. Anybody else? Websites?
Tell us about your website. What's your website?
So mine is jacobyryan.com. So I also do websites for people sometimes. And I mean, everything goes in the same purpose. I mean, everything goes in the same process where I just ask, what's the purpose? So with the website, with one kind I'm working on now, the purpose is to sell ebooks. So some people, the purpose is to sell stuff. Some is to get email confirmation. That's another thing that I think is important for us to talk about is in social media. As brands, we can't depend on our social media pages. I think one thing we have to proactively do continuously is drive our social media following on whatever channel you're on to your email list, because at any point, any social media network could be like Facebook and say you got to pay $20 for every post for your fans to see them. Or like MySpace, people can just migrate to another network after one day, and you don't have an audience anymore. You have to work from ground zero on the next one. But when you have your email list, that's your network, that's yours. You own that. You don't own your following on Facebook. You don't own your following on Twitter. Twitter owns that. So it's important to be aware of that as a kind of an insurance policy for us. But also going back to the purpose with websites and the Facebook ads, to connect it back to social media again, Facebook has a Facebook pixel where if your purpose is to get email subscriptions, you can put a pixel on your website to where every time you run a Facebook ad and that ad goes to that page where it has the email confirmation or you're trying to make a sale, whoever doesn't take the action that you're trying to get them to take, Facebook will then, with that pixel in the website, they'll make a whole lookalike list of people who, for one, didn't buy from you, and then who've been to your page and didn't buy from you, who've shown interest, and they'll also create lookalike mirror audiences of people across the nation who look just like those people who would be interested in it as well. So these are just tools that we can use, but at the same time, it just depends on what the purpose is of your website for your brand. Like some people, they don't want to operate, or they want to book off their website. They want people to call them. Some people rather than book off their website. So, it's just thinking about what's your purpose and then aligning your purpose of your website with your brand.
I love that. I'm glad you touched on that because that's huge. Hannah, thoughts on websites?
I like both of those comments. I think websites should be simple, depending on what your purpose is. If you're selling a product, that sort of thing. Consistency is key. Hire people to do their jobs. That's a great thing. Like if you're starting out something from the ground up, I know it sounds easy to just do it all yourself, but you'll be really glad looking back that you hired some professionals to help you really craft your message and get it out there in the right way. So hire people and pay them what they're good for. Animation is really awesome on websites. I love any website I go to that has a fun mouse or something moving, some sort of motion that gets me through to the bottom. We could go into design, but thinking of the way, again, you like to consume things and consume information. Usually you just want the meat and potatoes, get to the end game, we're going to contact each other or we're not.
Right.
So I think have a website, always have a place for you to go. It's kind of like your email list, that is your space in the internet world. So buy all the domains that you need and keep them forever. They may be worth thousands of dollars one day. Domains, website, that's super crucial to your brand. So it's where people will go after they find you on social media, even if they unsubscribe from your email list or whatever, they can still go find you, if that's in their search history or whatever. So websites are crucial.
I love it.
Yeah.
Very good question, and very important to social media if you're doing the digital marketing thing. The question asked was around a specific artist who really has a strong crowdsourcing type presence, I guess a strong community online. I think the question is something to the effect of, if we're starting out, how do I build community online as an artist? How do I build a crowd that is engaged in what I'm doing and maybe even weighing in on what it is and how it goes?
You can go where you think you find your people and follow them. Who follows this person? I want to follow these people. I'm looking through there. I like them. I want to follow them. And then they'll be like, oh, who just followed me? And they'll look at you and be like, hey, I like you. And I'll follow you back. And if you do it in a super organic way like that, you'll start to build it, and then it'll start to kind of find you after a while.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. All that I would piggyback off is say just keep consistent too as you're posting, so that when you are following people and they're following you back, there's something for them to see. Specific to Instagram, because obviously I'm always going to harp on that, but the first 9 images in your feed, people are going to read or see that first before they read your bio. So I like to say, people should be able to tell everything they need to know about you in those first 9 photos. So I would say too, I know that pretty photos aren't everyone's jam, but there are ways of collaborating with maybe local photographers to show off your art or whatever it is you're producing. And there are also, outside of Patreon and those sorts of platforms, there is a platform called I Fund Women, and that's a really cool way to get plugged into their community. It's crowdfunding, GoFundMe, but just for women entrepreneurs, and so those other women will turn around and fund your project right back. And I know the same thing happens on the artist crowdfunding page too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think both of those are, on point. And also, the collaboration piece is big, especially me as an artist. There are a couple of other artists where we have kind of it's called tweet decking is what it's socially called, where people who have their own markets team up and they'll repost each other's content to make sure they're keeping their network spread out and their market can see, or this person can be open to their market, so on and so forth. But one thing that I learned recently over the past couple of months that really blew my mind as far as marketing was, when I think about trying to create a community, I think, okay, I want to show myself to as many people as possible so they all can see me, so I can get somebody out of that, the law of large numbers, which is what I always acted on. But I realized and I learned, and this is what I learned, this isn't for me, from experience, but being as exclusive as you can be from the jump. to where if you do like whatever you do, ask what do you do, and then ask yourself why you do it, and say, okay, who else would do it for this reason? And a lot of the times that's a very niche audience, where you have like, there are examples of like when Apple tests out products. Apple will test out an iPhone. If their biggest feature is a camera, they're going to go to photographers and test it out to the photographers. And if the photographers like it, there's a technology lifespan that says the first person to adopt it is the innovator who adopts the idea, who produces the product. The second one is the early adopters, which are the first techies that are super on point in front of everybody, and they're the ones who kind of set the trends for the next level of adopters, and then the laggards come. So just going to being as definitive, as clarified, and as specific as you can on whatever market you're trying to go towards, and because you're creating a product specifically for them, and the value is in it so much for them that they spread it around organically themselves, and it kind of works to your advantage. That makes sense.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said about, I mean, you guys should probably have a whole other questions about what's it like to collaborate with other people communicating on social media. That's such a big part of it, and I love what you're talking about, doing that with your friends and stuff like that. It's critical, especially in the music scene online, and I like the kind of what you touched on there at the end. We have time for one more question. Sorry, it's late. You can tell my brain's. We do have time for one more question. So if anyone's got it.
I'm a big believer in growth mindset, so I love, you're just talking about what you learned from experience. But my question is, what fail in this area have you learned the most from? So like, what thing where you're like, I wish I had known that before, but I'm glad I know that now, or what thing did you discover?
I'm trying to think of this topic because I've got so many.
Or what would you think out of those is the most shareable, most worth knowing?
Yeah, I think, and I work my job is to talk to reporters and editors all day long and have them tell me no. So I fail all day long every day. And I think that was what I think maybe learning that, like, okay, why didn't that work when this person, so I think early on I probably figured out that learning from my failures is part of the game, right? But I learned recently, this may not even be related, but I want to share it. I learned recently that, when you're saying someone had a bad day, right? You can boil it back down to a bad 2 minutes. Right. And talk about the fact that it was give it its real time. You've given it a day. It was a bad 2 minutes, and you've let it have your entire day. So I just wanted to share that since we were talking about that. But yeah, failure is a really important part of every single thing you do, because there is only one way to learn. It's by not knowing what you're doing.
I would say I can't think of a specific thing, because like Tracy said, there are many. When you're managing someone else's voice and what they're putting out to the world, it can be a lot of pressure. So I would think also, just for me, just thinking about what you say before you say it every time. Just never putting things out there when maybe that bad 2 minutes got to you and you were like, I'm going rogue, I'm gonna, yeah.
Taking everyone out. Also, I think to trust your gut. Always. If it feels icky, well then give it a few minutes. Maybe it's not icky, but maybe it is. So just trust your gut on it and be like, this feels icky. Maybe I shouldn't do this thing, or I think I'm making a joke, but maybe it's not gonna fall on the right side of joke. So maybe I'm gonna pause it and see how many people I don't piss off today, because I tend to do that. So I think that's probably it. Trust your gut in every single thing. And if something feels like it's wrong, it might not be. Give it a rest and see if it is tomorrow.
And I think they're pretty accurate in saying, there's so much that we failed at, that we all fail at in what we do with our purpose. It's hard to touch anything specifically, but I know what's been most valuable for me personally has been simply to fail. It's been simply to let go of the idea that I'm not gonna fail, and let go of the idea that I can do this without failing, or let go of the idea that this is gonna be the best thing every time, and let go of the idea that this perfection, just letting go of the fact that, or letting go of the idea that this is just a sprint, that this only matters. Like whatever's happening in this project from today till next month to next year, however long it's going to last, this is so important because really it's not important. I mean, at the end of the day, this is another notch on your belt for the long term. So I think what's been important for me is to get as much as I can out of that experience while I have it, whether it's a contractual position, whatever it is. Use that experience to your best knowledge to be the best, to have the best effect for you going forward and be effective for you, and just letting go of the fact that you're not going to be this person you're not going to be Oprah, who's been doing this for 40 years, and you tried it. This is your first year. You know, I think embracing that first year, embracing that you suck, embracing that it's terrible when it is, and moving on and getting better is the best thing. Gary Vee's one person who really gave me a lot of inspiration on that, where it's just like, own up to your bullshit, you know. And he talks about clouds and dirt, where it says, keep your head in the clouds, keep looking long term as far as 10, 20, 30 years, but work like you only have today, you know. So yeah.
I love that. Man, good answers. I love hearing fail stories because they end up being so positive all the time. You know, it's counterintuitive. Well, man, thank you all so much for coming out. Y'all were such an entertaining, articulate panel. It was just great to spend some time with you. We do want to take just one moment, let y'all plug whatever you want to plug for your own businesses, stuff happening in Oklahoma City, and then we'll wrap up here. Thank you.
Well, I have 52 and 365, where I'm putting out a new song, a new video, and podcast explaining the song every week. That can be found at 52and365.com and jacobyryan.com.
Mine aren't really plugging me. Mine's plugging, you know, I got to plug my people. But there's a chance to expand Medicaid in Oklahoma. And if you call your legislators and tell them you want that, there's a chance that you could maybe make that happen. So, yeah, exactly. And then also there's a chance that, you know, there's going to be dedicated bike lanes in Oklahoma City, but only if people get involved and help, because it's a volunteer effort, and we're trying to create this big group to make that happen. So if you want to get involved in that, you can find me on Twitter, @tzeek.
I'm going to plug Oklahoma City Pride. This is a brand new year for Pride, a newly formed organization. The former organization is dissolved. Lauren Zuniga at the helm. She was former 39th Street Executive Director, and she actually resigned just to create the newly formed Oklahoma City Pride Alliance. So I will give a little plug that the Monday of Pride Week, which there's going to be a Pride Week, like an entire week for Oklahoma City, and there's stuff that's even happening starting June 1st for Pride Month, because it is the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots, which is why we have Pride. And so Paris is Burning is a documentary, Rafiki is a documentary. These are things that you could come see during Pride Week, things that will educate you as an ally and make you realize that being gay in Oklahoma is more than just like glitter and boys in their underwear. So it's something that's really near and dear to my heart to expand the educational efforts a little bit further for Pride. And the mayor will be joining us at the opening ceremonies on Monday for a very special proclamation that week. So I just think if you're an ally, if you want to get involved, you should volunteer. You know, we need hands on deck Pride weekend, and if you want to let our queer youth and people who really need to like celebrate that weekend, if you want to help them out, I think the best way is to volunteer that weekend, and it's all I'm doing for the next 6 weeks. So.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And we do want to say thank you so much to the Show Starts Now Studios, to Dennis Spielman and all the awesome projects he has. Thank you for creating Art and Victory. Thanks for having us out. And we also want to thank Main Site Contemporary Art Gallery. We are here in Norman. You can catch them on the second Friday Art Walk here in Norman. And these incredible paintings, which are all over, I wish y'all could see. You just have to come down to see them. It's David Holland, and he will be the artist resident and running this exhibition from May 9th through July 12th. We'd love to see you there. I'm Christian Pearson, and we'll see you all at the next one. Thanks.
High fives. Hey. Hey.